openers.
Set it up. Gunther Eagleman, RFK Jr. is doing a presser on autism rates. You need to watch every second of this. It's going to blow your mind. So we're going to go ahead and let it rip.
I'm going to go over some of the key numbers from the ADDM report. Overall, the autism is increasing in prevalence at an alarming rate. The study tests 8-year-olds who were born in 2014. And by the way, these studies are 2 years later than they should be. And one of the things that we're going to do as we move this function to the Administration for a Healthy America, to the chronic disease division, the new chronic disease division, is we are going to have updated real-time data so that people can look at this, so Americans can understand what is happening with chronic disease in this country in real time, and not have to wait 2 years to react. We don't wait 2 years to react to a measles epidemic, and we should not, or any kind of infectious disease. We shouldn't have to do that for diabetes or autism. The ASD prevalence rate in 8-year-olds is now 1 in 31. Shocking. There's an extreme risk for boys. Overall, the risk for boys of getting an autism diagnosis in this country is now 1 in 20. And as high in California, which has the best data collection. So it probably also reflects the national trend, 1 in 12.5 boys. This is part of an unrelenting upward trend. The prevalence 2 years ago was 1 in 36. Since the first ADDM report in 1990, which was 1992 births, autism has increased by a factor of 4.8. That's 480%, I believe. The first ADDM survey was 22 years ago, when prevalence was 1 in 150 children. In all the core states, the trend is consistently upward, and most cases now are severe. So about 25% of the kids who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal, non-toilet trained, and have other stereotypical features, head banging, tactile and light sensitivities.
Okay, real quick. He said 1 in 5 right there.
He said 1 in 4. 1 in 4 of all those kids who are diagnosed with an autism diagnosis, 25% of them have extreme diagnoses. And
right,
so
where they can't talk or not functioning, like you said, head banging, stuff like that.
Right, and that's what's mainly defined by the nonverbal, and then I think the non-toilet trained are like the two big ones.
Okay, because I was wondering, TNT Cycles mentions here, I have to question their data. Are they simply overdiagnosing boys because they like to play more? That's a very valid question, and I think that is one of the factors, to be honest with you. But the fact that 1 in 4 are nonverbal, or in that ranking or whatever, makes me think that they're not simply overdiagnosing boys because they like to play more. Maybe some, I don't know. It's hard to guess, but wow, if 1 in 4, damn, that's insane. These numbers are off the charts. JB asked a good question too. I wonder how many of these parents take prescriptions. That's definitely a valid question in my opinion. And it kind of goes with what TNT said, is I wonder if these people are just, giving pills to their kids because that's the solution that these people have grown up to see. That's how you fix problems or whatever. But anyways.
Well, I mean, it's still insane that in California, boys have an 8% chance of being diagnosed with autism.
Right.
I mean, that's incredible. Right.
When I heard that initially off rip, I say, oh, well, that's just them overdiagnosing. It's every little boy. It's stuck up, California, rich parents don't want to deal with their kids, so they want to get them on some kind of pill to straighten them out, right? But maybe not. Maybe not, you know, but that was just my gut reaction. But let's continue here.
Stimming, toe walking, etc. One of the things that I think that we need to move away from today is this ideology that the autism diagnosis, that the autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases, are simply artifacts of better diagnoses, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria. If you look at Table 3 of the ADDM report, it's clear that the rates are real, that they are increasing in the last 10 years, which is the beginning with the first one, year by year, there is a steady, relentless increase. I want to, because this epidemic denial has become a feature in the mainstream media, and it's based on an industry canard. And obviously, there are people who don't want us to look at environmental exposures. And so I want to just read you some of little excerpts from some of the older studies. The baseline for autism in this country was established with the largest epidemiological study in history, a study of all 900,000 children in the state of Wisconsin, children under the age of 12. They found 0.7 children had autism in every 10,000. That's less than 1 in 10,000. Today we're 1 in 31.
That is aggressive. To go from less than 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 31.
Yeah,
that is aggressive.
it's
Now, there
very. I
Go
was just
ahead.
going to say it's indicative of some type of cause, the effect of some sort of cause, right? What is the cause?
Right. And obviously he's laying out that it's clear he's getting pushback for looking into environmental concerns. But something of note too is obviously there's a disparity between men and between boys and girls. Obviously boys are getting declared at a higher rate, which I think overall, when you look at some of the slightly changing definitions, and also like kind of how it's like not a social fad, but it's maybe that's the best way to describe it, right? Like, some of your people, even here in chat will say like, oh man, like I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't autistic, right? And like things like that. So people kind of use it almost as like it's like a step above being retarded. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like, the people say when they do it, like stupid stuff like that as well. But obviously, one thing to note here too is, obviously he talks about like the California data collection being like the most like in depth of them all, which would make sense when you think about of all the states that probably has the most kind of diverse and robust mental illness kind of literature, it probably would be California. They probably do hand out mental illness designations more so than other states just because they are so wokeified over there too. So I think like there's obviously a part of that plays into it as well, but I don't think that's enough to explain just how over time those rates have continually increased to an exceptional level, especially when there is data showing that like there are extreme examples of this with the severe cases of the autism as well too. And one thing to note too, yes, the SSRIs are antidepressants. You more often probably know them as Lexapro, what's like one like Proloft. Like there's a lot of common ones that are out there now that people use for antidepressants. And I think some birth controls actually come in tandem with SSRIs too. So like, 16-year-old girls getting antidepressants mixed in with their birth control doesn't make for a good hormonal cocktail.
Alt Companion mentions that RFK said they've looked at the numbers and it's absolutely not that it's overdiagnosed. Good to know. Good to know.
Yep.
Tix Bomber mentions what's in the food and water, what's in the vaccines slash drugs, which those are in the water. I've heard that, you know, a lot of the prescription drugs people take ends up in the water system.
What is it? What is it was atrazine, right? They're turning the effing frogs gay.
They're turning the frogs gay.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's true. I mean, and you think about other things too, like with, for example, like sucralose. I'm sure people are familiar with like aspartame, right? Like aspartame is like the artificial sweetener put in like things like Diet Pop to make it like taste sweet, and then sucralose is like the secondary version of it. But like sucralose is like incapable of being broken down by nature. And so the longer that we use it, the more sucralose actually seeps into our water supply. And so I'm sure that
Crazy.
there's actually other chemicals like that as well that are completely man-made artificial constructs that, for one, we don't even know like how some of these have long-term effects by themselves, in the same way that like we have no real hard data on things like combo vaccinations. It's probably in the same light of like, we really don't know, let alone what the you know, the long-term consequences of a singular high dosage of what this sucralose is over a long period of time. Then you add in like, well, what if they were also getting sucralose, atrazine,
Birth
and
control.
right, and the same thing with like these SSRIs and all these medications, they find their way into water supplies. So we don't really know. And if you look at like things like microplastics in people in men's ball sacks, right? Like all these like rising things that we're finding, things like brake dust being stuck in people's lungs, because it can penetrate on like a, you know, on the particle level. Like all these things that like we just really like basically don't know. And there's only so much you can pull back to at this point anyways, right? Like the environment is such a hard thing to control. I mean, you'd have to like basically lock down the entire like country and then do like excessive like hazmat operations if you wanted to actually like make some like true headway on stuff like this.
Oh
And then
yeah,
you
for
think for
real.
like East Palestine, right? Like that whole that's like one example of like all these chemicals being instantly interjected into that entire ecosystem over there. And over a long enough period of time, that stuff finds its way and filters itself like across that area. Now, some chemicals obviously will stay a lot more locked based on if they're in solid state or they're gases or they're liquids. But again, it's like you can only do this type of stuff for a long enough period of time before, you know, 10% of every water source you drink from has some kind of cancerous toxic material in it. So we're
Yeah.
gonna have to develop new kind of filtration systems that filter out for things like, you know, sucralose. Soon everybody will have to boil their water every single day because like it's just so contaminated. It's like fallout.
Um, Jamie asked if that was the chicken. Yes, the chicken is still here. Have not made chicken dinner yet. Unfortunately, I don't know if she's gonna recover. And I mean, she doesn't bother me sitting here, but I feel bad for her. Her legs just aren't working right. But
Saturday,
appreciate you sharing that about your child there, Earl's daughter, by the way. Not putting any of it on screen, but appreciate I'm reading everything, reading along.
wouldn't it be funny you come on Saturday eating a nice big old fried piece of chicken? Like, huh, I wonder where that fried chicken came from. Right.
Yeah. Let's see here.
What did Earl say? I missed that part.
Who?
I missed the comment from Earl's daughter. I'm reading it now.
Oh yeah. She's got a few. But yeah, I'm glad you had a good doctor. That's pretty awesome, Earl's daughter. You had a good doctor that you talked to initially about that. Let's see here. No noise, just fried chicken. LOL. So yeah, we're only halfway through this. Let's go ahead and continue playing. Sorry, we got a little off track there for a second.
That study also confirmed the 4-to-1 male to female ratio. There were at that time just over 60 children in Wisconsin with autism. And today it's around 20,000. In 1987, there was another exhaustive study, a peer-reviewed study in North Dakota, set out to count every child in the state with a pervasive developmental disorder, including autism. That study meticulously combed through every record, every diagnosis, and he even conducted in-person assessments of the entire population of 180,000 children under 18. The autism rate they found was 3.3 per 10,000. So that's in line with the 1 in 10,000 that was found in Wisconsin 17 years earlier. For context, today, the last number of 1 in 36 is 83 times higher. In 1987, out of 1 million, every 1 million kids, 330 were diagnosed with autism. Today, there are 27,777 for every million. If you accept the epidemic deniers narrative, you have to believe that researchers in North Dakota missed 98.8% of the children with autism. That thousands of profoundly disabled children were somehow invisible to doctors, teachers, parents, and even their own study. The same researchers who followed the original cohort for 12 years to double check their number, they went back in 2000 and found that they had missed exactly one child. So doctors and therapists in the past were not stupid. They weren't missing all these cases. The epidemic is real. Between 1959 and 1965, researchers from 14 hospitals associated with major universities undertook the National Collaborative Perinatal Project, tracking 30,000 children from birth to age 8. This was no half-baked survey-based analysis. The study conducted 9 separate screenings covering neurology, psychology, speech, language, hearing, and visual function. Every developmental quirk, anomaly, and disorder was logged with painstaking detail. Autism, a condition characterized by profound impairments in social communication and behavior, would have stood out like a neon sign. There were 14 cases. That's 4.7 per 10,000. So we know what the historic numbers are, and we know what the numbers are today. And it's time for everybody to stop attributing this to this ideology of epidemic denial. In 2009, the California State Legislature charged the Mind Institute at UC Davis with because this myth was already becoming pervasive, the myth of epidemic denial was already becoming pervasive in the mainstream media. The California legislature directed the Mind Institute at UC Davis to answer the question. And Irva Hertz-Pichotto is a highly esteemed, revered scientist, neurology, and epidemiologist, came back with a definitive answer. The epidemic is real. Only a very, very small portion of it can be changed to can be charged to better recognition or better diagnostic criteria. I want to say a couple of other things. There are many, many other studies that affirm this. And
Dang.
Right. Terrifying revelation. You know, one thing I wanted to add in there too, a lot of the data that he's pulling is from the ADDM network, which is the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network. So like while he was focusing on them there too, they primarily track 4-year-olds and 8-year-olds. I think that's like when they make those two major diagnoses at like those two kind of major steps at life. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that the prospect overall is, for one, just terrifying because it's not like you can reverse this. right? Especially once the kid does develop autism, as many parents and unfortunately come to the understanding when that does happen and they see regression in their children. Um, and then also just the going back to like the more of the free speech emphasis on this discussion is once again a topic that is entirely not safe or allowed on certain platforms because of the what's the right word, maybe because of what the consequences may be if some of these things are true, um especially as it relates to its correlation and rather what RFK seems to be suggesting the causation of as it relates to environmental factors, not up to and including things like vaccines. um it's I'm just glad that we have someone who seemingly would care about these things. I think obviously he might be captured on some other regards, but this was a nice, good development to see from that. Can't wait to see either one, this get, called fake news and the left kind of spirals out about it. But also, two, probably more likely that as you guys seemingly no one had seen this yet, it's going to get buried and no one's going to talk about it.
Mm.
And ultimately continues to get buried, same way which he was pointing at to, which is the myth of the non-epidemic, which is how most people and any researchers and and stats individuals were highlighting it as saying as if it wasn't real at all. Ultimately, then when push comes to shove, like he highlighted there in the last bit with that prominent individual, that yeah, when you're forced to answer the question and look at the data, you're forced to say yes, there is an epidemic. And it's just unfortunate because I'm sure a lot of people may know parents who have autistic children. I think a lot of new parents also fear, because we don't know what's causing it. They fear basically anything that they do medically wise with their children may ultimately be the linchpin and that what regresses their child. And I think no parent obviously wants to see that happen to their kids. And it's just a very it's just unfortunate overall. And I think it's one of those things that again that you don't need a conspiracy for, but you look at large about how everything's kind of carrying itself. This pitches in with like the depopulation agenda, right? And if they can't, basically if they can't abort you, everything in your environment will try to retard you before you can even make it
Right.
to being a teenager.
Make you infertile, whatever, right?
Right.
Six Bomber asked, what the fuck did they start doing in 2008? And TNT mentions that in 2008, the housing market bubble busted and China captured our drug market. So that's interesting. I don't know. Was that fact checked by House AI? I don't know, but no, that actually makes sense. I don't know if that correlates, but
Good.
I wouldn't put it past China, and it would be another reason why we need to bring our production of our our pharmaceuticals, our antibiotics and stuff like that back into our own country. Make sure that it's not being built by people that want to ultimately rule over us, which I mean, let's be real,
Right.
big pharma wants to rule over us as well, but just is what it is, I guess. No, weird. We just had a huge drop off of people. Like 10 people just clicked away. I wonder what that's about. It's a glitch in the matrix.
RFK sports.
Come back to YouTube. What are you guys doing? Now, let's see here. One thing I wanted to say about this whole, conference from RFK Jr. is, oh yeah, Timcast. You're right. Thanks, TNT. Yep, 8:00. Everybody went over to Tim. It's all right. I appreciate everybody for being here until then. I don't mind being the pre-show.
Oh yeah, I forgot this is a thing.
Yeah. But I feel like RFK Jr. was campaigning a little bit right here. It's like, dude, you don't need to campaign anymore. You got the job. Like, I appreciate you letting us know these numbers, but like, let's fix it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you don't have to campaign anymore. I feel like he's campaigned for so long that maybe oh, I just got your message. But maybe I don't know. He's just kind of stuck in his old ways. And it's like, okay, bro, now that you have the mic and the pedestal, let us know. And then tomorrow, tell us some solution. I was hoping in the end that in that last minute, he would propose some type of like solution that he had, coming up. We're going to do something to address this. We're launching an investigation. We're launching a research team. We're funding a program that's going to, delve into this deeper and challenge pharmaceutical companies or challenge whatever, you know what I mean? Something. But
I think they did announce, though, before this press that they will be doing a large-scale investigation. I'm actually trying to double-check that now.
Okay.
But it could also be a part of like prepping, I guess, like prepping the mainstream, I guess. But yeah, here I just went and double rechecked it. This is from Grok, but it's also citing CNN and Newsweek. But it says that RFK and the U.S. Health and Human Services is announced a massive testing and research effort to determine the cause of rising autism rates, which he refers to as an autism epidemic. So firstly, I think the precedent, what has to be set first, which I think is what he was doing with this presser, was saying it's real. Because if you look at other sources, they would just tell you like, no, it's not real. Or they would do like what I was saying earlier, which was a lot of people say like, no, it's actually because autism has a looser definition. There's no rise of autism at all. So I think at first you have to lay out the facts and the research that shows like, actually, no, it's not just loose definitions. There is a growing, rise in actual autism, not like loose definition autism. And then secondly, you move to pinpoint what is the cause or causes or leading cause. And then third, then is implement solution and figure out like what to go. So we're kind of like in phase one of it. So you kind of got to break the shackles and that mental ice around the idea that it's not happening, right? Because some people would argue till they're blue in the face that autism, nothing's happening and there's no link to autism whatsoever. More than likely because they have maybe ties to big pharma or they're just wokeified at all. But I think that's like kind of like phase one. But again, the presser was, I think, a lot longer than that. And I think there were more people who spoke at that press release too. But I ultimately agree with you. Like I think for something this important, and this is no dig on RFK, it's just unfortunate. But you would think you would have someone who could very eloquently speak about such a prominent issue. Because I think Tick said it best, right? Like the amount of the labor, the mental labor that's required to listen to RFK and hear the words that he's saying is intense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been better, like had they had somebody, say it for him,
Mm-hmm.
and be an easier way to get information across.
Right, you're right about that. It seems like he's struggling, struggling to talk, and it's painful. You're right.